Now that we know what complex numbers are, we're going to think of these in terms of quadratic equations. If I have the square root of a negative number, negative n, I can actually rewrite this as the square root of -1 times the square root of n. Since I squared is equal to -1, I would be equal to the square root of -1. So this is I square root of n. This means in general I can rewrite negative square roots in terms of I. For example, the square root of -1 is just I. The square root of -9, well, the square root of 9 is 3, so this is 3i. The square root of -27, well, this would be the square root of -1 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 3. So we would get 3i square root of 3. Let's think of solving this equation. If we use the square root property, we would just get that x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 9. So we get that x is either +3 or -3. And we can now do this with negative numbers and negative roots. For example, if I have x squared equal to -16, I can take plus or minus the square root of both sides the same way I did before. The square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of -1 is I. So I once again have two answers, 4i and -4i. With this one, we can't just use our square root property, but we can still use our quadratic formula. Negative b would be +4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so -4 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 8, all over 2 times a, which is 1. So this gives us 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 32 over 2. Well, 16 minus 32 is just -16 over 2. So this gives us 4 plus or minus 4i over 2, which can then be simplified to 2 plus or minus 2i. So we can continue to use our quadratic formula even with these complex roots that we end up with, and it will still work out the same way.